Intersecting Media presents.
We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
The next thing in late night talk.
Here we go.
While you're working, eating, and playing, he's watching.
It'll be like O10.
Keeping you informed.
Thank you.
Jason Page.
Demented and sad, but social.
Covering all the day's news from a studio somewhere in Southeast Asia.
Worldwide!
And talking about it with you.
Blah, blah, blah.
You're Up Late with Jason Page.
Hoo-ah!
Or up early.
Good morning.
But just stay up.
It is time.
Here's Jason.
All right. Thank you, Chad Erickson. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome to another edition of Up Late. A Wednesday/Thursday edition of the show. Now, you may notice something different. A couple things here. Some business to take care of before we get to our special edition of the show. First of all, I am live right now. What it says up there in the corner? I am actually live. I wasn't going to do a show at all today because I've been dealing with a medical issue the last couple of days. Also, I was up really late, wee hours of the morning here in Singapore. My father was undergoing a surgical procedure, so I was staying up to see how he was back in the United States. So it was a bit of a rough night. But I wanted to... I don't like the idea of ever having the show go dark for one day, let alone two during the week. So I decided to do something a little different. We'll get to that in a second. You may notice I'm not wearing headphones today. The big over-the-top cans over my ears. Very excited. Got a new set of Sennheiser IE40 in-ear monitors. I hate the way headphones look doing video. I know for those of you listening to the podcast, it doesn't really matter. And in theory, this is sort of a radio setup, but I can't stand having something over my head. It's just, every time I look at myself on camera, it looks silly. So we got these new Sennheiser in-ear monitors. They're the IE40s. I had gone and tested some out, and I love it. If you are in the market for in-ear monitors, try to find these. They're discontinued. So if you're looking for them, they're not going to be easy to find, but very well worth the money. And they're really not that expensive. In the U.S., I think they're about $80, $85, something like that. So we're doing something different. And we will get back to an all-new live 1-hour episode of Up Late with Jason Page on Thursday/Friday. We will get into all the time. I've got so much that I want to talk about. I mean, I've been preparing shows for the last 2 days and haven't been able to do them because of these medical issues that I've been dealing with, both mine and in my family. So what we're going to do today is I wanted to give you guys a taste of the latest episode of the Intersection podcast from Believe. We do this podcast weekly. We always get a cool guest on. It's a lot of fun. But I also this week did the interview via video with our guest for the Intersection podcast, and that is Lon McEachern. He is the play-by-play voice, hand-by-hand voice, if you will, of the World Series of Poker on ESPN. He's been in the broadcasting business, the sportscasting business for a zillion years. He is somebody I have an immense amount of respect for. And there's a reason I have even more respect for him than some people that I actually talk to and have spoken with during my career. And I explain that as we start this in-depth conversation. Enjoy. I want to start in a way that is not going to portray me in the best light. A lot of people might be asking, how do you know Lon McEachern? How did you get to talk to him? How did you get him on the podcast, on the show, all this stuff? Here's the actual story of how I met Lon McEachern. like, oh, come on, man. I'm like, give me a shot. But it was already kind of deep into the process. And I said, who you got in mind? He goes, well, we're talking to this guy, Lon McEachern. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Lon McEachern to do bowling? He's the poker guy. Like, come on. X Games, Lon McEachern. No, come on, man. And he's like, yeah, no, that's probably who we're going with. And I was like, damn it, man. This job was right up my alley. I was pissed at Tom. I didn't talk to him for a while. And we've made up now, but I was kind of pissed. And then I started watching Lon doing the bowling broadcasts. And there's no better way to say it. I was a dick. I was a real dick. So Lon is doing the play-by-play, and it was like the first broadcast, and I'm on Twitter doing my usual trolling thing. And Lon's doing a broadcast, and he says something during the broadcast. I can't remember what it was. But I immediately took to Twitter, and I heckled him. I did the heckle job on Twitter of Lon. It was like his first broadcast. I'm just being a jerk because I'm bitter because I couldn't get the job. And Lon, to his credit, because he's a far better human being than I will ever be, Lon shoots me back a kind of a fun response. Not like, hey, go F yourself. He took it totally in stride. Was like, hey, maybe you can, give me some pointers. And from that moment on, I was completely smitten with Lon McEachern. It was a love fest. Love the guy. No, really, because not too many people would take kindly to getting criticized on Twitter by some, half-baked broadcaster like me. But you took it all in stride, and it was fun. And you did the PBA tour for that 1 year.
And we met in New York. Remember? I insisted we meet at a bar in New York to talk this all out. Yeah.
And that's what happened. Lon wound up coming, and Lon one day was like, hey, when I come to New York, we'll meet up. And that's when we actually sat down and talked. And you said something to me when we first sat down and talked. I don't remember, but it was something to the effect of, man, why were you such a dick? Which frankly I deserved. But I talk about just for a second, because I want to go a little bit through your career, not just the poker stuff, but through your career. How did the bowling thing come about? And what did you make of winding up doing that for a year?
God, that was a horrendous experience getting it. It was,
Why was it a horrendous experience?
All right, so I'll tell you, the backstory for me. I did not know that you had gone through and you knew Tom that well and all. But so I got the job, and it was a time early still-ish in poker, I think. They'd been through some good years, but freelancers are always looking for another gig, right? And it was going to be okay money for a freelance thing and for what I was doing. And so I got the gig, and I might be misremembering, but the big picture is that then they said, no, you don't have it anymore. And it's like, I remember in a hotel room with my wife at the time, and it's like we were planning on this, and then they yanked it out from under me, and they said, we're going with Gary Thorne.
Oh, Gary Thorne of the famous Pete Weber call. Who do you think you are?
I was a big Gary Thorne fan. I loved his hockey. I'd worked with him when I was doing, some stuff with Monday Night Baseball at the time and all like that. So, but I was bitterly disappointed. And then they call me back, and suddenly I feel like sloppy seconds because they call me back and says, "Oh, Gary wanted too much money," and so then they gave it back to me.
They almost did. It was like a backhanded compliment. Well, we could get you cheaper, so we'll get you. That's by the way. Yeah. And I'm not saying this to disparage Tom Clark and the PBA Tour, but that is a very PBA Tour-ish kind of story.
Yeah. Well, what I learned. Okay, so my 1 year, and my first year in poker was and I learned, and I know I didn't have all the terminology, and I didn't have all the nuance that people wanted. I mean, I was so honored to be on this show. I watched it growing up. It was a thing, and to be included on that list of announcers doing PBA on an ABC/ESPN, it was such an honor. It was a feather in my cap, and I really wanted to make something happen. And I loved Randy. When I worked in local television in California in Santa Maria, he was from Santa Maria. I didn't know him. He won his first tournament. I had him on my show at local TV in Santa Maria, California. market number 116 like 2 or 3 times. And back when he won his first tournament, second tournament, and then we never saw each other until the day I walked in after getting the job. And I wish I could have gone on further with it, because I think it could have been, something really special, and he would have taught me and I would have learned. But then talk about a PBA thing, and I'm not going to dish on the people that are there because, but the guy's gone now. So the guy who'd taken over, he made a budget near the end of the first year. He created a budget and then left to go work for Twitter. And then I get a call saying, this budget we have does not include a play-by-play announcer.
Yes.
There's no money in the budget for a play-by-play
I remember them
announcer.
saying that.
And they took the sideline live PA guy who knew bowling and all the, upside down and backwards. And so
your intel matches mine.
And so I'm a little bitter because I think I could have been a lot better, and it wasn't my, finest moment.
Your intel matches mine too, because they told me that they basically had no money in the budget. They were just going to take the guy who does like the web.
No line item for play-by-play.
And they were like, we're just going to take the guy who does the web streaming during the week for Full Frame, I think it's called, or 10th Frame, whatever their web streaming thing is, and we're going to put him on. And again, I like Tom Clark. I think it's an admirable job what he's been able to do to get the PBA Tour back to life on TV with Fox. And this was
not his call at the time either. Right. That was not Tom's call at the time.
So no, I give him a lot of credit for that, but I'll always kind of harbor a bit of a grudge because you got the job that would have been my dream job as somebody that's literally been bowling since he was 9 years old. Talking about Lon McEachern here on the Intersection podcast, and really a treat for me because he's somebody that well, frankly, doesn't need to come on with me.
Hey, I haven't worked in a year and a half. No, I did work last weekend. I did the World Series this last week. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, no, so you're in the middle of doing the World Series, and I want to kind of rewind a little bit because I'm not, this is your life sort of thing, but, I go back to 2003, and it's hard to believe it's been, almost 18 years now that we're talking about, the moneymaker effect and all that. And what made me actually think of you was I saw the story about Chris Moneymaker leaving, I think it was Poker Stars Poker Stars after being with them for so long and being let go. And I know he's been picked up by another company now, but talk about, is it possible to overstate the Moneymaker effect? I mean, do we sometimes go too far, or was his impact and what he did in 2003, basically going from nobody to World Series of Poker winner, is it possible to overstate his impact on the game?
From my perspective, no, because I'm so emotionally involved and have made so many mortgage payments because of him. But I will say that it was a confluence. It was a perfect storm. We had ESPN committed. They had been airing stuff, but it wasn't, great stuff. And so you had Moneymaker, you had ESPN in the first year of what has now been their long standing run. You had the whole camera. You could see all the cards of the players, and you had millions of dollars at play, and you had a great, foil and Sammy Farha in second place. So that all combined to really light the fuse. What kept the bomb blowing up, though, was Chris Moneymaker because of who he is. He I can't believe he's lasted this long with Poker Stars because him on the road. He has been on the road until like a month ago from 2004. And he had done so much for them and so much for the fans and for the small poker rooms who invited him in. And he said yes. And he came down. He would sit for a week in a small poker room and play on their live stream if they had one, or their tournaments or cash games, hang out and drink with them and just. So he's the one that really kept that ball rolling after the initial explosion. So I give him all the credit in the world. Absolutely.
Do other people in the poker world disagree with the sentiment that he's responsible for the big boom? Or because you made it sound like you, from your perspective, do, but are there other people who are almost bitter towards the fact that he's gotten so much attention or so much credit for it?
No, because he is, I would compare him to Tiger Woods and how he brought attention to golf. He brought sponsors to golf. He brought money to golf. And that's exactly what Moneymaker did. Nobody was complaining about $1 million poker purse in Houston this last week. It would not have happened in the long run without Chris and what he did, after winning the main event. So, no, everyone, they see Chris and, there's a little bow down to Moneymaker wherever you go.
You talk about the Tiger comparison with Moneymaker. I want to make a comparison, and probably others have made this comparison. I try not to read too much what other people say and do, because then I feel sometimes it impacts my own thoughts, and I like to kind of have my own original thoughts.
Then you might figure out you're wrong. You don't want to do that.
Exactly. But I think of you and Norman Chad, and I'm sure people have had to have said this to you. You're the Madden and Summerall of poker. I mean, you guys are the Madden and Summerall. You are the John Madden and Pat Summerall of the poker world in terms of your longevity, your banter back and forth, the relationship on the air at least. Give me some sense for what this last 18 years, and I know it's been a blur probably for you. And I know Norman's recovering from COVID, so get well wishes to Norman, who I think I last interviewed about 11 years ago when I was in Hartford. Talk about that relationship and what that has meant in the overall scheme of this broadcast team.
In a sense, we hit the ground running from my point of view. Norman didn't know who I was, but I knew who Norman was. I read his weekly column in the San Jose Mercury News every Friday, NFL picks, and I would just laugh out loud. I loved his sense of humor. I appreciated what he was doing, and I knew exactly what he was doing. And he was bringing seriousness with an overtone of comedy. And that carried through into the poker shows and even in our personal relationship, because, I talked to him on the phone all through those 17 years. And people think I do a fake laugh pretty good, but it's not. I think he's hilarious. And he would call my house, and my wife knew who I was talking to. And it was just laughter at all times. So, very smart. He knows the game. He has a non-jaded sensibility about sports, anything he's doing. But I respect him so much in his journalistic integrity. And our main producer, just a few days ago, Matt Morantz from 441 Production, the original company that did the poker shows, tweeted out, he says, now that Norman can't do these shows, it's a good time to really laud what he has done. And he, more than anyone, knows what Norman did for the early years. He was the backbone of those shows on a journalistic level, on a comedic level, on just a general sensibility in how we're going to treat poker. So again, people don't understand really how much Norman meant to the TV shows. They just heard his one-liners, but so much behind the scenes is coming from him. It's amazing.
What's the relationship like between you two and the players? If you go walking through the rooms, what is that relationship like? Is there that reverence for you, for him? Is there an appreciation? Do you get the sense that players understand what you two have meant as much to the broadcasts as their play has?
In a general way, yes. Specifically, also there are players who don't like our style because it's not poker. They don't think it's not as much poker. It's more, it's meant for the ESPN audience.
It's entertainment.
Yeah, exactly. So they do appreciate it. On the whole, I will say that for years we really could not walk around the Rio during the World Series of Poker together. We had to just go on opposite directions and move our way through the room. We wouldn't get any work done, and it was very gratifying. And that all came to a head this year when we were nominated for the Poker Hall of Fame, and so that meant a lot. And that's the kind of thing we've been feeling for a long time, is this sense that we had something to do with the poker boom as well, and we were along for the ride. I remember the first couple of shows, we looked at them before we actually were working and announcing on them, and we thought they were just amazing shows. And Norman and I looked at each other and says, let's not screw this up. That was our goal, not to screw up what the producers gave us. And our goal was just to make it a little better. You could have run it without any announcers. Glad they didn't, but hopefully we made it a little better each time.
Our conversation with Lon McEachern of the World Series of Poker, a longtime broadcaster in the sports industry, a local broadcaster in the Bay Area, has had a really great run throughout his career. And he was somebody I really wanted to talk to when we were planning this season of the Intersection podcast. He was actually one of the first people I reached out to while I was in quarantine for 2 weeks in a hotel room in Singapore. After Moneymaker, who's been the most important poker player in the last 20 years? Who's been the most influential, impactful poker player in the last 20 years?
There are three different levels on that. Overall, I'm probably going to think Phil Hellmuth.
I had a feeling he would be in the list.
Yeah, but there is a list. It's hard because there's something for everyone.
Daniel Negreanu.
For the hardcore folks is Phil Ivey, probably the best player ever. There's the Doyle Brunson, who brings the old leather ass, high rollers story, and just like in awe of this guy. And then of course a Daniel Negreanu, who is just omnipresent. And so you put those four together, and I think you do a pretty good job of the best of everything in the last 20 years.
Lon, when you think about where the game is now, where it was in 2003 versus now, and we talk about the different innovations and online poker, and poker was everywhere at one point. I remember I used to walk into Mohegan Sun on a Saturday night, and I couldn't even get on a table. I'd just sit there and wait. What has been the biggest innovation per se that has sort of catapulted the game?
Computers, and it started with the online play,
party poker,
and party poker stars, full tilt poker, and then a few bad actors here and there, but that got people to the World Series. They would play, in the poker terminology, they'd play satellites. And so for a $10,000 buy-in to the main event, you were able to go through a process. If you wanted to start with $1 buy-in, win that tournament, go to a $100 buy-in, go to a 5K, so you make the steps. So you had almost maybe 50% of the field coming in with these satellites, online satellites. So that's one, because you had the monster fields. Two, online poker, because then the technology started evolving where you could track what other players are doing. You could know who your opponents are, not just an anonymous screen name across the way. You could track what they've done, who they've played, how they play, the hands they played. And then that became, that evolved into a training sense where there's so many training modes online now. And then that's a paid business now. And you've got all these training sites. And then you've got the solvers that tell you, this computer program that tell you the optimal way to play a hand. And it's so, and I use the word solvers, that's what it's called, but people are worried that no limit hold'em is going to be solved like chess and backgammon,
right,
things like that, where it can be so predictable.
Is it almost analysis? Paralysis by analysis, though? As somebody who watches the game and observes it and sits with Norman, and you guys probably talk about this back and forth, is there something to be said for sometimes getting too inside the numbers? We talk about it in baseball all the time. Oh, it's become so statistics oriented and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Is it sometimes just I have always been a feel player. I have always played based on feel, who I'm sitting with at a table, kind of letting a couple of rounds go around and analyzing who my competition is and getting a sense for who the better players at the table are and kind of zeroing in on, certain marks, so to speak, at the table. Is there something to be said for just old-fashioned just sitting down and playing poker? Yeah,
there is. And it's mostly in your local, card room that you're going to play in with people that you see a lot and the people that are going to be regulars there. Where the training comes in is such a small percentage of the players you're going to see it at a main event, a 10,000 player main event. It is the 1%, 1% of the 1% maybe. So this whole training, the training kick, I'll say, as it were, is for those elite players. And then they've got kind of like a separate tour. They had a high roller tour, and they just go around the world and trade money, basically. You had a small group of people, and hopefully to get a rich businessman who thinks he can play with them. So that's where all that comes in. And it comes down to odds, and they train themselves to play the odds. And in the long run, and that's the thing, great poker players don't go to the card room and come home and say, hey, I won $1,000 tonight. That's a minuscule thing, and you've heard this too, where you've got to look at it as a year-long session and keep records. And if you lose one night, you go back, you're going to win another night. So it's all about the numbers and all about the odds. When you get to the main event, which is what we broadcast on ESPN, it's great because you get those players, but they're having to deal with these, no pun intended, these wild card players from nowhere who are field players who are making it their life goal to play in the main event. And so they're unpredictable. And then you've got an unpredictable deck, and those meet, and you have some guy you never heard of winning the main event. So it's fun that way. But that whole training thing is that upper echelon. They play high roller online, high roller live, and that's where that all comes in. And they level each other. It's like they know what the other guy's going to do, so that guy knows what he knows he's going to do, and I know what you know that I know. So it's crazy. It is not for the normal poker player.
You and I both play the game. You probably play it now definitely more than I do, because in Singapore the limits are a lot higher. Like, I don't even think there is such a thing as 1-2 here. Like, it starts at a higher limit, like the very starting. And there's only a couple of major casinos here where you can play. But I used to play a lot. I mean, my first go around living in New York City, I used to play 3 or 4 days a week in the underground games. That's where I cut my teeth, learned how to play, got my ass kicked, lost a ton of money, wound up losing the person that was supposed to be my first spouse. I mean, just the horror stories that you hear about. It's like it's the Rounders thing with Matt Damon, where he's like, you never hear about the people that lose, you only hear about the people that win. And so I kind of I cut my teeth playing in the underground. I didn't play in casinos. I was playing in literally those games where you knock on a door, somebody slides open a thing, and they're usually got a gun strapped to their waist. I mean, it was literally that.
Yeah,
and that's kind of where I cut my teeth and learned how to play, because poker wasn't legal in New York City. As I grew in the broadcasting industry and people started to know who I was, if I'd go into a casino or into a card room, people knew who I was, and there was automatically a target on my back. While people would smile and say, "Hey, it's Jason Page from 95.7 The Game," or "Hey, it's Jason Page from ESPN New York," or I see him on TV, whatever. They were coming to take my money because they wanted to be the one that took the guy's money at the table who's the sportscaster. You have to go through the same thing, probably to the nth degree, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah.
Is it difficult for you to even play poker? Because I have to imagine every time you walk into a room, there's some hotshot who's like, I want to be the one to bust Lon McEachern.
They will declare that once they figure out who I am. And a lot of times they don't know who I am until I say something. And then they recognize the voice, and then it bubbles around the table. And that's fine. I am not a serious enough player where that's going to get in my way of doing what I want to do. And actually, I bring it on myself too, because there's a card room in the Sacramento area in California that I have been employed by. So I'm their poker ambassador. My job is to go in there and get knocked out or give them an experience and play their hand and play a hand with them. So it is tough, and it does change when I'm playing an actual larger tournament because the people there they know who I am. They're not wowed by who I am, or they're not saying it verbally, but they still have I can tell I get a lot of action when I'm in a hand. There's a lot of people who want to get in there. And if you play right, you can use that to your advantage too, because they're going to play extra hands against you, which means that the hands they're playing aren't as premium, and you get a good hand, you play against them. So, I consider myself not a poker player. I'm an ambassador for the game by default.
But you're good. You're being modest. You're good. You know how to play the game.
I've had
you
some
can't
success,
watch for 17 years and not get good.
I can't help it rub off, right. So it depends the setting I'm in. If I'm going to play a World Series event or a World Series circuit event, I know those players, it's a higher buy-in, and I know their skill, and I'm very careful, and I'm a much better player when I'm careful. If I'm playing with my buds in the local room where I'm hired, I'm a lot looser, but still I walk away pissed when I get knocked out. I still have that competitive edge, but I have that Scottish streak in me, in my DNA, which just hates losing money too, or spending money. So it's a tough world to be in if you're a tight player. It really is.
Yeah, I could imagine. Talking with Lon McEachern on the Intersection podcast. Gambling at large. Because look, there are some people who will look at poker and say, well, it's gambling. And I am somebody who has talked very openly about my gambling addiction over the last 20 plus years. And a lot of people will say, well, poker's not gambling because it's a game of skill. And most states now have ruled it a game of skill, which is why it's allowed in so many places. And that's, part of the lure of it, is that it's more of a game of skill. Yes, there is the element of chance. You don't know which cards are going to get flipped over. As much math as you do in your head, there's still odds to be worked out and all of that. But gambling at large, you get to be around it a lot when you go cover the World Series of Poker. How much has gambling at large sort of changed and evolved? Because now you've got casinos everywhere. You've got online gambling available everywhere, online poker being played everywhere. It's a zillion-dollar industry. There's so much money being made on gambling. And I can't help but ask this question because I think about it a lot, and I don't want to sound like the Debbie Downer on this. But are we, on some level as a society in the United States, capitalizing on people that have addictions and have these predilections and have these issues with gambling? Are we almost preying on them at this point with the ease with which we have made it to gamble and be involved in the gambling world?
Yes, absolutely. And it can be seen in the Native American casinos that can pop up just about anywhere.
Yes.
You can see it at the Venetian in Las Vegas, where the late Sheldon Adelson so despised online poker on one hand, even though it could help his business, and just thought it was so dangerous and so terrible. And on the other hand, he's doing the exact same thing in his casino, and there are underage gamblers in his casino as well. So yes, that almighty buck, and it is too easy to do it. I totally agree. And when you talk poker and gambling, and you're right, it is a game of skill, but you've got a random deck of cards, so anything can happen.
And
obviously.
there are some people that I've played with people, Lon, and you know it. You play with some people that want to gamble, and they're not playing the game the same way you and I are, where we're, waiting for our premium hands or things like that. They're going in there to gamble. They're going in there with, a flush draw, and they're shoving all in with 2 cards to come, hoping they're going to get there, because they know if they do, they've got the nuts. But there are people that are there to gamble.
And that's where we're seeing, you're going to see people who have dipped their toe and maybe their entire leg into the training sites, and tells you what is correct to do in a certain situation. And a lot of times it is just that, which you mentioned, and you will see people where it's the odds are appropriate to do that shove. And it does seem reckless and out of line, but they'll give you 100 reasons, up the wazoo on why what they did was correct. But I don't see with the new crew of highly trained young gun robotic type players that don't talk at the table, you don't see them in the pit losing their poker paycheck on the way out, like you did in the old days. There's stories of poker pros who win an event and they can't get to the parking lot without losing the chips they have, and they just won.
I'm that guy.
Yeah,
I am. I'm that guy. I would go
that with a new player.
Lon, I'd go make $700 or $800 in a 7 or 8 hour session, and I can't get out the door without walking by a craps table and donking it all the way on a craps table.
Yeah.
I know the story. I am the story.
You are the story, right? And so you don't see that with the newer crew. What you do see, I think, I see a lot more sports betting, and that is the same thing with the gambling. Is that has become so easy to do and to satisfy that itch. But yeah, I worry. I really do worry about that and the fabric of our society, where you really can't, drive an hour without running across a casino, a busy casino, and they all seem to be busy, which was a great underscore. I'm not going to delve into this, but it was a great underscore that Donald Trump was able to run casinos into the freaking ground when everyone else is so successful. But I digress. Yeah, it is too easy. There are too many of them. But society need money, and that's a way to get the money to keep the schools open. So yeah, it's tough.
You mentioned Sheldon Adelson, by the way. One of his prized possessions, he recently passed away, but one of his prized possessions is right here in Singapore, Marina Bay Sands, which is one of his properties, or was one of his properties. Amazing casino here. If you ever get to Singapore, people should. Yeah, if people ever get to Singapore, they should obviously go and check it out. Talking with Lon McEachern, World Series of Poker commentator, joining us here on the Intersection podcast. Social media. It's another way the game has changed in terms of the way players interact. In terms of the way everybody interacts, but especially in terms of the way players interact. I was watching I was just reading online before I was talking to you. Vanessa Selpst, who used to obviously be a world-class poker player.
Yesterday or today, yeah.
Yeah, and she was tweeting about playing in a tournament or something like that, and but she was able to kind of step away from the game at a young age, made her money, kind of walked away, and is doing who knows what now. I talked to her when she won her first big event in Connecticut. I think it was at Mohegan or Foxwoods back in 2009 or 2010. But how has social media changed the dynamic of the game?
The game, huh?
Or at least the personalities and the way they interact. Because, look, there are people that don't like each other, and they snipe at each other. And, there's also...
a lot of times anonymously. That's the worst thing about social media. I got into a little battle, just last week with guys that I know, and I'm happy to
I saw
put my
that
name to it. Yeah, a lot of people are not, but Vanessa actually went to work on Wall Street. I don't know if she's still there, but with a baby and all that. She had a great tweet where she came back to play a tournament. And she said, yeah, I played great, played for 6 hours, built a big stack, and took a bad beat and lost all my chips. I love this game.
Yeah.
So it's tough. But social media, I think kind of like, not to the degree, but when I talk to players who are going to be playing on our TV table who have never done that before, they are shocked by how much their game changes and how all the eyeballs on them factors into their decisions, and not wanting to look stupid on TV, and not be disparaged by those on social media who would do just that for someone, who is not playing optimally. And so, and we saw it on these last shows that we had, and people are mean. People
Yes,
want to
they
have
are.
a voice, and people want to stir the pot, but without the repercussions and without the consequence. So they've got a different screen name than their regular name.
For people who haven't been following, and shame on them if they haven't, for people who haven't been following, give me a sense for how much COVID changed the World Series of Poker this year. I know I've read up on it, but explain to our listeners how much it impacted the World Series of Poker, because it impacted it in a big way.
It really did. The World Series was not run this in 2020. It's an event that they moved to the summer months of Vegas, which, if you've ever been to Las Vegas in the summer, you know why nobody does anything in Vegas in the
Yes.
summer. But this event drew people to Las Vegas in the summer months. 80,000, 90,000 people to come play in the World Series of Poker. It used to be, it was such a big footprint that until they wised up, the other casinos basically would shut down their poker rooms and say, oh, the World Series here, we can't do anything. That has flipped 180 degrees, where now there's probably 10 poker rooms in Las Vegas who now build their tournament schedule around the World Series of Poker. And you've got a ladies' week that leads up to the ladies' championship of the World Series of Poker. So if you bust out of the World Series and you're a woman, there are 4 other tournaments going on that day or the next day. Same thing with the seniors events and all the specialty events. So everyone's riding on the coattails of the World Series of Poker, and it made Vegas in summertime. And you can go far back as you want, from the people who are buying clothing at home and buying food to traveling and cars and hotels and all. The economy that the World Series of Poker has built in basically Death Valley in the summertime is amazing. And boom, it stopped. It just didn't happen. They did a semblance of the World Series of Poker. They tried to do something online, and they got a huge field on Not the World Series site, and it was the different buy-in and different structure. And then in December, they said, no, we have to have a world champion. And they decided to play online on their own site and a partner site in the international. And so they had an international group, and they had a U.S. site, and then all online. And they got down to the final 9. They played a final 9 live table in Czech Republic and one in Vegas. And the winners of each of those tables then met one-on-one in Vegas to play, and the winner of that became the world champion. Those are the shows that just aired yesterday, matter of fact, for the first time. So they didn't get the hotel rooms. They didn't get the people. It just disastrous for so many people who work in the industry, the maintenance crews, the people who do the rooms, the people who park the cars. There's no valet parking in Las Vegas. It just destroyed it, basically. And it's going to take a long time to recover. They're very confident they will have a live event this year, but you're looking October, November, December, which would be great to be in Las Vegas, during wintertime. So sure. Things are looking good for this year, but later this year, they're not going to get the field they have. But I think once we get by 2021, 22, I think we'll be pretty close to normal.
I'm glad you mentioned women, too, because women don't get enough credit oftentimes in our society. And we often, we talk about equal pay for equal work and things like that. And women in poker, and it's something you've probably had a chance to witness over the last 17 years, more women entering the game, more women being part of the game, more women being accepted and respected in the game.
No. No. You look at the percentage of women. If you look at the percentage of women in the main event, it's been pretty steady at 4% and below, right in that area.
Well, then why not?
Of course, yeah, that's huge. That is a great question, and that from what I can glean, women think male poker players are total assholes, and they don't respect them at the table on a lower level. Of course, you're going to get the Vanessa Selps, and the few others, Maria Hose and like that, who know what they're doing, and Jamie Kerstetter, my partner on these shows as well. So much respect for her. But it's the X and Y, and it's the Venus and Mars, and they're just wired differently, and their motivation is different in general. But it's so hard to build that grassroots effort when it's that grassroots room is so difficult to break into. It's so intimidating for a woman to walk in the first time. It was intimidating for me to walk into my first poker room. And I can just imagine, a woman walking in with those same trepidations of wondering how the game actually works in a live sense, and having the misogynistic issues that you're going to run into, hands down, it's going to happen, one way or another. So it's unfortunate. We just need to shift attitudes and realize that, women should really be running pretty much everything that men are involved in, and
Yes.
it will be better.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I let you go, last one. You've done a lot in your career. World Series of Poker, you did X Games, you did bowling. Did you do roller derby? Did you do roller derby too?
No,
you never
I didn't
did
do
roller
roller derby.
derby? Okay,
I
okay.
watched a lot of Charlie O'Connell growing up and Joni Weston.
But I mean, you've done a lot. I mean,
Inline skating. I did inline skating for 2 years, so maybe that's where that came.
X Games, all that. Okay.
Yeah.
Is there one thing on the bucket list that you would still like to do, that you'd still like to call, that if the opportunity was there, you would go for? What would it be? If I give you one.
The Olympics. I never did the Olympics. And that has changed as well. Because so much of my work life and the glamour factor of the travel. I've been so many places, all 50 states and most of the continents and a lot of countries and, large events and stuff like that. But I always wanted to cover skiing in Austria. And I got a gig hosting World Cup skiing for 1 year on ESPN. And we were about to make the hop over to Europe. And they came in and they replaced me. This was like 1980, 88, 80, 90. I forget what year it was. They replaced me with Michel Tafoya, who took my job and took it to Europe and denied me from my dream of covering skiing in Austria. But yeah, no, I always wanted to do the Olympics. I was I did X Games and I'm well rounded. I do a lot of different sports and I think I could have fit in well. They talked about poker in the Olympics, and they talked about kickboxing. I did martial arts for a decade or more, but never got the chance to do the Olympics. So now a lot of the stuff is done in an announce booth in New York. They don't travel. They were doing COVID announcing before COVID was a thing, and so it wouldn't be the same. But it would be nice to do an Olympics. And because all our shows are post-produced, and you got to get excited about a 9 on the river, so I can do curling. Come on.
Fair enough. Lon McEachern, I want to say thank you. There are a million reasons you could have said no to my request, namely starting with my being a jerk back when you got the PBA tour job. You are a gentleman and a scholar.
I'm almost over that, okay?
All right. I appreciate the time, and be well, be safe. And have you ever been to Singapore?
No.
See, you got to get here. We got to work on that. We'll have to get you something where we get one of the casinos to bring you in here. I'll have to go talk to the powers that be here.
Oh, that'll be fun. I know there's no chewing gum in public or.
That's what everybody knows. Everybody says the same thing when I say Singapore. They're like, "Oh, you get caned if you chew gum." So, you know what's really good about Singapore? There's no COVID. There's no COVID in Singapore. Yeah. That's the one thing about Singapore that I can tell you right from the start.
We don't hear about Singapore in that. That's okay. Cool.
They've had country of 5.5 million people. They've had 29 deaths.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
No, there's no COVID here. It's crazy,
nice.
and it's because they're super strict. But there's no COVID.
Yeah. Oh, Australia did a job too.
Yeah.
So
Lon, thank you so much. Seriously.
Great to see you, man. I'm glad you're well and happy, and I hope this just makes your world here with this new show.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, buddy.
Great to talk with Lon McEachern. So I feel so lucky that I got to do that, have that conversation. It would probably surprise you to know the people that are on my bucket list to talk to. It's not the names you would necessarily think. it's people you grow up watching. It's your peers oftentimes that wind up being the people you like to talk to. People you've worked with, people you've admired and watched their work. And especially, not to sound patronizing, but I like talking to older broadcasters that have seen the entire development of the industry. Whether it's in news, we did it with Jerry Brooks last year on the podcast, talking about the news industry and the development of local news and how you cover breaking news, and talking to somebody like a Lon McEachern who's been around for 35 years and getting a sense from him about how the industry has changed and evolved. I could have talked to him all day. So very, very much appreciate him giving me the time. And that is how we wrap up this special edition of the Up Late with Jason Page. I almost said the Intersection podcast. Thank you to Lon McEachern again for making some time for me. This is busy time of the year, obviously, with the World Series of Poker main event and all that. But as he said, it was a different year. We will be back with a regular episode of Up Late with Jason Page on Thursday night. I promise. I don't care if I got to do the show sitting in a chair. We will have a normal edition of Up Late with Jason Page on Thursday night / Friday. Thanks to my doctor. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be doing the show today. Shot me up with some drugs. Legal stuff for the pain I was in dealing with a foot issue. I don't know. It is what it is. All right, that's a wrap. We'll catch you back here Thursday night / Friday. I'm Jason Page. No matter where you are in the world, mask up. Get vaccinated if you can. Stay safe. Stay grounded. I'll talk to you later. Up Late with Jason Page. See ya.